The small human colony on planet X-17 was a picture of peace and progress. Nestled between purple mountains and shimmering blue lakes, the settlement buzzed with life and hope. It was a stark contrast to the overcrowded cities of Earth, a fresh start for the brave pioneers who had ventured into the stars. Among the colonists was 8-year-old Sophia, a bright-eyed child with an infectious laugh and an insatiable curiosity. Her parents, Dr. Emily Chen and engineer Mark Rodriguez, had brought her to this new world when she was just a toddler. Now Sophia knew no other home than the red soil of X-17 and its twin moons that hung like watchful eyes in the night sky. On this fateful day, Sophia skipped down the main street of the colony, her dark pigtails bouncing with each step. She waved at Mr. Johnson, the colony's farmer, who was tending to his crops of alien vegetables that had adapted well to X-17 soil. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," Sophia called out cheerfully. "Are the starberries ready yet?" The old farmer chuckled, his wrinkled face crinkling with affection. "Not yet, little one. But soon, I promise. They'll be the sweetest batch yet." Sophia's eyes lit up at the thought. Starberries were her favorite treat, a fruit native to X-17 that tasted like a mix of strawberries and honey. She couldn't wait to sink her teeth into the juicy, star-shaped berries. As she continued her walk, Sophia's mind wandered to the exciting day ahead. Today was Dream Day at school, where each student would share their hopes for the future. Sophia had spent hours preparing her presentation, complete with colorful drawings of the spaceship she would design one day. Lost in her thoughts, Sophia almost bumped into Dr. Yamamoto, the colony's chief scientist. The woman's usually calm face looked worried, her eyes darting nervously to the sky. "Oh, hello, Sophia," Dr. Yamamoto said, trying to hide her concern with a smile. "Shouldn't you be heading to school?" Sophia nodded, suddenly aware of the strange tension in the air. "Yes, Dr. Yamamoto. Is everything okay?" The scientist hesitated for a moment before replying. "Of course, dear. Just a busy day ahead. Run along now." As Sophia walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The adults in the colony had been acting strange lately, whispering in hushed tones and glancing nervously at the sky. Even her parents seemed worried, though they tried to hide it from her. Pushing these thoughts aside, Sophia entered the school building. The classroom was abuzz with excitement as her classmates prepared for Dream Day. Her best friend, Zach, waved her over to their shared desk. "Sophia, I can't wait to see your presentation," Zach said enthusiastically. "I bet your spaceship designs are awesome." Sophia grinned, pulling out her carefully rolled-up drawings. "Thanks, Zach. I stayed up late finishing them. What about your dream? Are you still going to be a xenobiologist?" Before Zach could answer, a deafening roar filled the air. The ground shook violently, causing pictures to fall from the walls and students to cry out in fear. Miss Taylor, their teacher, rushed to the window, her face paling at what she saw. "Children, quickly. We need to evacuate," Miss Taylor shouted, trying to keep her voice calm despite the panic in her eyes. Sophia grabbed Zach's hand as they followed their classmates out of the building. Outside, chaos reigned. The sky, usually a calming lavender, was filled with massive ships. Their sleek, dark forms blotted out the sun, casting ominous shadows over the once peaceful colony. Colonists ran in all directions, some toward the emergency bunkers, others desperately trying to reach loved ones. Sophia's eyes darted around, searching for her parents amidst the mayhem. Suddenly, a beam of searing light shot down from one of the ships, striking the colony's communication tower. The structure exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, cutting off any hope of calling for help. "Mom! Dad!" Sophia screamed, her voice lost in the cacophony of explosions and panicked shouts. As if in answer to her cries, Sophia spotted her father running toward her, his face etched with determination and fear. "Sophia!" he yelled, reaching out for her. But before they could reunite, a group of armored figures materialized between them. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with helmets that concealed any trace of a face. In their hands, they held weapons unlike anything Sophia had ever seen. One of the figures turned toward Sophia, its featureless mask somehow radiating cold malice. Time seemed to slow as the alien raised its weapon, pointing it directly at the terrified child. In that moment, as fear threatened to paralyze her, Sophia thought of her dreams, of the spaceship she would never build, of the starberries she would never taste again. She thought of her parents, of Zach, of the life she had known on this beautiful, doomed world. And then everything went white. The blinding white light faded, and Sophia found herself still standing, untouched. A force field shimmered around her, deflecting the alien's weapon blast. Her father, Mark, had activated a personal shield at the last second, saving his daughter's life. "Run, Sophia," Mark shouted, his voice strained as he struggled to maintain the shield. "Get to the emergency bunker." Sophia hesitated, torn between obeying her father and not wanting to leave him behind. But the decision was made for her as Zach grabbed her hand and pulled her away from the advancing aliens. "Come on," Zach urged, his face streaked with tears and dirt. "We have to go." As they ran, chaos erupted all around them. The Galactic Empire's forces, now clearly visible as they landed more troops, began systematically destroying the colony's buildings. Homes crumbled, labs exploded, and the once peaceful streets became a war zone. Sophia and Zach ducked behind an overturned vehicle, catching their breath. From their hiding spot, they could see the full extent of the invasion. Hundreds of Empire soldiers marched through the streets, their armor gleaming in the fires that now raged across the colony. "Why are they doing this?" Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. "We never hurt anyone." Zach shook his head, unable to answer. Suddenly, his eyes widened in horror. "Sophia, look." Following his gaze, Sophia saw a sight that made her blood run cold. A massive figure, at least a foot taller than the other aliens, strode confidently through the carnage. Unlike the faceless soldiers, this one's helmet was open, revealing a face that was all too human-like, twisted into a cruel smile. "That must be their leader," Zach whispered. As if hearing them, the alien commander turned in their direction. His eyes, a piercing electric blue, seemed to look right through their hiding place. With a gesture, he sent a group of soldiers toward them. "We have to move," Sophia hissed, tugging at Zach's arm. But it was too late. The soldiers reached their hiding spot, roughly grabbing both children. Sophia kicked and screamed, but her small fists were useless against the armored giants. The soldiers dragged them to the center of what used to be the colony's main square. Other captured colonists were being brought there too. Forced to kneel in the dirt, Sophia spotted her mother, Emily, among the prisoners. Their eyes met, and Emily's face crumpled in anguish. "Mom," Sophia cried out, struggling against her captor's grip. The alien commander approached, his boots crunching on the debris-strewn ground. He looked over the assembled humans with disdain, as if they were insects beneath his notice. "People of Earth," he began, his voice amplified and echoing across the ruined colony. "I am Supreme Commander Zarak of the Galactic Empire. Your planet has been found guilty of illegal expansion into Empire territory." A murmur of confusion and anger rippled through the colonists. This was the first they'd heard of any empire or territorial dispute. Zarak continued, unmoved by their reaction. "As punishment for your transgression, this colony will be eradicated. Let this serve as a warning to Earth and any other species that dares to challenge the Empire's dominion." He paused, his cruel gaze sweeping over the terrified faces before him. Then, to everyone's horror, it settled on Sophia. "Bring me the child," he ordered. The soldier holding Sophia shoved her forward. She stumbled, falling to her knees before the towering commander. Despite her fear, Sophia glared up at him defiantly. Zarak seemed amused by her courage. "Such spirit," he mocked. "It's almost a shame to extinguish it." Emily's anguished cry pierced the air. "Please, not my daughter. Take me instead." But Zarek ignored her pleas. He raised his hand, and a hush fell over the square. Even the fires seemed to burn more quietly, as if nature itself was holding its breath. "Let this young one's fate be a lesson to all who would defy the Empire," Zarek declared. Time seemed to slow for Sophia. She saw her mother's tears, heard her father's desperate shout from somewhere in the distance. She thought of her dreams, of the stars she'd hoped to explore. In that moment, facing death, Sophia felt not just fear, but a deep burning anger at the injustice of it all. As Zarek's weapon began to glow with deadly energy, Sophia did the only thing she could. She stood up, looked the alien tyrant in the eye, and spoke her final words with all the courage she could muster. "Earth will make you pay for this." The weapon fired, and Sophia's world exploded into light and pain. The last thing she heard was her mother's heart-wrenching scream, echoing across the ruins of their shattered dream. The news of Sophia's execution spread across the galaxy like wildfire, reaching Earth within hours. As the tragic story unfolded on screens worldwide, a wave of shock and disbelief washed over humanity. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square, their faces pale and tear-stained as they watched the footage of the colony's destruction. In Tokyo, candles flickered in the night as people held vigils for the lost souls of X-17. From the bustling streets of Mumbai to the quiet suburbs of Sydney, a global mourning began. At the United Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva, emergency alarms blared. Military leaders and politicians rushed into the crisis room, their faces grim with the weight of what had just happened. General Maria Rodriguez, Earth's top military strategist, slammed her fist on the table. "How could we let this happen?" she demanded, her voice thick with emotion. "We should have been prepared." Admiral Chen, head of Earth's space fleet and Sophia's grandfather, stood silently by the window. His usual stoic demeanor was cracked, revealing the pain of a man who had just lost everything. "We never imagined, never thought they would target civilians," President Amelia Johnson said, her voice barely above a whisper, "especially not a child." As the leaders argued and grieved, screens around the world continued to show images from X-17. The sight of Sophia, brave until the end, standing up to Commander Zarek, became a rallying cry for humanity. In London, a young artist painted a mural of Sophia on a city wall, her defiant stance captured in vibrant colors. In Rio de Janeiro, protesters marched with signs bearing Sophia's last words, "Earth will make you pay for this." The global mourning began to shift. Sadness turned to anger. Shock transformed into determination. Across the planet, a united cry for justice and vengeance rose up. Back in Geneva, the crisis room had fallen silent. President Johnson stood up, her eyes blazing with resolve. "We cannot let this stand," she declared. "The Galactic Empire has made a grave mistake. They thought they would crush our spirit, but they've only awakened the sleeping giant." General Rodriguez nodded, a fierce smile on her face. "It's time we showed them what humans are truly capable of." All eyes turned to Admiral Chen. He had been quiet throughout the meeting, lost in his own grief. Now he looked up, his face set with grim determination. "We have a weapon," he said softly. "Something we've been developing in secret. Something that could turn the tide against the Empire." The room held its breath as Admiral Chen walked to a secure terminal. He entered a series of complex codes, and suddenly, a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a massive warship unlike anything Earth had ever produced. Its sleek design spoke of incredible speed, while its armaments promised devastating firepower. But there was something else about it, something almost alive. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Chen announced, "I give you the Fury." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. President Johnson stepped closer to the hologram, her eyes wide. "What is it exactly?" she asked. "It's more than just a warship," Admiral Chen explained. "The Fury is powered by a revolutionary AI system, but not just any AI. This one is special." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. We found a way to channel human emotion into the ship's core systems. The collective anger, grief, and desire for justice of every person on Earth can be used to power the Fury, making it the most formidable weapon in the galaxy. The room erupted in excited chatter. General Rodriguez was already discussing tactical possibilities, while others debated the ethical implications of such technology. President Johnson raised her hand, silencing the room. "And who will command this ship?" she asked. Admiral Chen's eyes glistened with unused tears. "My daughter, Sarah Chen, Sophia's aunt. There's no one more qualified or more motivated." As the leaders of Earth began to plan their counterattack, the news of the Fury spread across the planet. In every city, in every home, hope began to rise. The Galactic Empire had sought to break humanity's spirit, but instead they had forged it into a weapon. Across the stars, on his flagship, Commander Zarek smiled smugly, believing he had crushed Earth's ambitions with one cruel act. Little did he know, a storm was brewing. A fury like no other was awakening, and it was coming for him. The massive hangar doors slowly opened, revealing Earth's secret weapon to the world for the first time. The Fury stood majestically, its sleek black hull gleaming under the spotlights. At over a kilometer long, it dwarfed every other ship in Earth's fleet. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the foot of the ship, her heart heavy with grief and determination. She had lost her niece, Sophia, to the Galactic Empire's cruelty. Now she would be the instrument of humanity's vengeance. As Sarah walked up the boarding ramp, she felt the eyes of the world upon her. Billions watched through live feeds, their hopes and anger channeled into this moment. The weight of their emotions was almost tangible. Inside the ship, Sarah made her way to the bridge. The crew stood at attention as she entered, their faces a mix of awe and anticipation. This was no ordinary warship, and they were no ordinary crew. Each had been chosen not just for their skills, but for their emotional connection to Earth's cause. Sarah took her place in the captain's chair, her fingers brushing over the controls. "Crew of the Fury," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. "Today we carry the hopes and dreams of all humanity. Are you ready?" A chorus of determined "Yes, Captain," echoed through the bridge. Sarah nodded, then turned to her AI interface specialist, Lieutenant Raj Patel. "Lieutenant, initiate the emotional core interface." Raj's fingers flew over his console. "Initiating ECI now, Captain." Suddenly, the ship hummed to life. Lights pulsed along its corridors, and a soft, almost human-like sigh seemed to emanate from the very walls. On the main screen, a swirling vortex of colors appeared, representing the collective emotions of humanity being channeled into the ship. Sarah felt a tingling sensation at the base of her skull as her neural implant connected her to the Fury systems. In an instant, she was aware of every part of the massive ship, from its powerful engines to its advanced weaponry. But more than that, she felt the emotions of her crew, of the people of Earth, all flowing through her and into the ship. "ECI stable, Captain," Raj reported, his voice filled with wonder. "The Fury is. She's alive." Sarah closed her eyes, allowing herself to fully merge with the ship's consciousness. When she opened them again, they glowed with an otherworldly light. "The Fury isn't just alive, Lieutenant," she said, her voice overlaid with a harmonic resonance. "She's angry." As if in response, the ship's engines roared to life, vibrating with barely contained power. "Navigation," Sarah called out. "Set course for the last known location of the Empire's fleet." Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, the ship's navigator, plotted the course. "Course set, Captain. Estimated travel time using conventional drives. 3 weeks." Sarah smiled, a fierce and determined expression. "We don't have 3 weeks." "Fury, activate the emotional warp drive." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. The emotional warp drive was theoretical, never before tested in actual spaceflight. It was said to harness the raw power of human emotion to bend the fabric of space-time itself. As the Fury prepared to make its first jump, Sarah addressed her crew one last time. What we're about to do has never been done before. We're not just flying the ship, we're channeling the collective will of humanity. The Empire thought they could break us by killing an innocent child. Instead, they've awakened a force beyond their comprehension. The ship began to vibrate, energy crackling along its hull. Outside, the stars seemed to stretch and blur. For Sophia, Sarah whispered, a single tear rolling down her cheek. For Earth. With a blinding flash and a sound like 1,000,000,000,000 hearts beating as one, the Fury vanished from Earth's orbit. In the blink of an eye, it reappeared at the edge of Empire space, leaving a trail of shimmering emotion-charged particles in its wake. On the bridge, the crew looked at their instruments in disbelief. They had just traveled a distance that should have taken weeks in mere seconds. Sarah stood from her chair, her eyes still glowing with the power of the emotional core. "Send a message to Earth," she commanded. "Tell them the Fury has awakened, and the hunt for justice has begun." As the message was sent, Sarah turned her gaze to the stars ahead, where somewhere the Empire's fleet awaited. They had no idea what was coming for them. The Fury, powered by the grief, rage, and hope of all humanity, was on the move, and nothing in the galaxy could stand in its way. The Fury emerged from its emotional warp jump on the outskirts of Empire space. The bridge crew blinked, adjusting to the unfamiliar star patterns on their view screens. They had traveled farther in moments than any human ship had gone before. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm, her eyes still glowing with the power of the emotional core interface. "Status report," she commanded, her voice echoing with the collective determination of humanity. Lieutenant Raj Patel spoke up first, his fingers dancing over his console. "All systems operational, Captain. The emotional core is stable and eager." Sarah nodded, feeling the ship's anticipation mirroring her own. "Navigation, any sign of the Empire fleet?" Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka frowned at her readings. "Negative, Captain. But I'm picking up residual energy signatures. They were here, and recently." "Then we follow their trail," Sarah declared. "Fury, can you sense them?" The ship's AI, now a manifestation of humanity's collective consciousness, responded in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I feel their presence, Captain. Their cruelty leaves a stain on the fabric of space itself. We can track it." As the Fury began to move, following the Empire's trail, the hunt truly began. Days passed as they chased the elusive enemy across star systems. Each jump brought them closer, but the Empire always seemed to stay just out of reach. During this time, the crew faced numerous challenges. They encountered asteroid fields that would have torn apart lesser ships, but the Fury's emotion-enhanced shields held strong. They navigated through treacherous nebulae that scrambled their sensors, relying on the ship's intuition to guide them. One particularly harrowing moment came when they were ambushed by a group of Empire scout ships. The enemy vessels appeared suddenly, opening fire without warning. "Evasive maneuvers," Sarah shouted as alarms blared across the bridge. The Fury responded instantly, not just to Sarah's verbal command, but to her very thoughts. The massive ship moved with impossible grace, dodging energy beams that should have struck home. "Return fire," Sarah ordered, her eyes narrowing. The Fury's weapons came to life, powered by the righteous anger of billions. Beams of pure emotional energy lashed out, cutting through the Empire ships like they were made of paper. In moments, the skirmish was over. The Empire scouts were reduced to drifting debris, while the Fury remained untouched. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Sarah felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She realized it was coming from the ship itself. "Fury," she asked softly, "what's wrong?" The AI's voice was tinged with sorrow when it replied, "I feel the loss of life, Captain. Even our enemies. Is this what it means to be human?" Sarah placed her hand on the console, feeling a connection deeper than mere technology. Yes, fury, compassion, even for our enemies, is part of what makes us human. But so is the determination to protect our own and seek justice. This moment of reflection was interrupted by an excited shout from Lieutenant Tanaka. "Captain, I found something." All eyes turned to the main view screen as Tanaka brought up her discovery. It showed a massive space station hidden in the heart of a dense nebula. Its design was unmistakably Empire. "What have we here?" Sarah mused, leaning forward in her chair. Raj's fingers flew over his console as he analyzed the data. "It appears to be some kind of research station, Captain. Heavily shielded and armed." A fierce smile spread across Sarah's face, and likely full of valuable intelligence. "Fury, what do you think? Can we take it?" The ship's response was immediate and charged with excitement. "Their defenses are formidable, but they've never faced anything like us. We can do this, Captain." Sarah nodded, feeling the crew's determination mixing with her own and flowing into the ship. "Then let's show the Empire what happens when they underestimate humanity. All hands, prepare for battle." As the Fury moved into position to attack the station, Sarah thought of Sophia and all the innocent lives lost on X-17. This would be their first major strike against the Empire, a chance to gather crucial intelligence and show their enemy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Little did they know, this battle would reveal a secret that would change the course of their mission and shake the very foundations of the Galactic Empire itself. The Fury approached the Empire's hidden research station, its hull gleaming with barely contained energy. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the massive structure looming before them. "All hands, battle stations," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Fury, initiate stealth protocols." The ship's AI responded immediately, its voice resonating through the bridge. "Stealth systems engaged, Captain. We are invisible to their sensors." As the Fury drew closer, the crew could see the station's defenses, rows of energy cannons and swarms of fighter drones. It was a formidable fortress, but Sarah felt no fear. The combined determination of humanity flowed through her and into the ship. "Weapons systems online," Lieutenant Raj Patel reported. "Awaiting your command, Captain." Sarah took a deep breath. Fire at will. The Fury unleashed its arsenal, emotion-charged beams of energy lancing out to strike the unsuspecting station. Explosions bloomed across its surface as shields failed and weapon emplacements were destroyed. The Empire's response was swift but disorganized. Fighter drones poured out of launch bays, only to be swatted aside by the Fury's point defense systems. The station's remaining cannons fired blindly, unable to lock onto the stealthed ship. "Their shields are down to 30%, Raj called out. "We've opened a gap in their defenses." Sarah nodded, her eyes glowing with the power of the emotional core. "Fury, prepare for direct neural interface. We're going in." The ship's AI acknowledged, and Sarah felt her consciousness expand. Suddenly, she wasn't just commanding the Fury. She was the Fury. Every weapon, every system was an extension of her will. With inhuman precision, Sarah/Fury targeted the station's weak points. Weapons fire became surgical, each shot disabling critical systems without causing catastrophic damage. They weren't here to destroy, but to conquer. As the battle raged, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka gasped. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy spike from the center of the station. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Before Sarah could respond, a blinding beam of energy shot out from the station, striking the Fury head-on. For a moment, the ship shuddered, its systems flickering. "Status report," Sarah demanded, feeling the pain of the ship as if it were her own. Raj's fingers flew over his console. "Shields holding at 60%, Captain." But that blast, it was powered by pure emotion, just like us. Realization dawned on Sarah's face. They'd been studying the same technology. That's why this station was hidden. She gritted her teeth. "Fury, Divert all power to forward shields. We're going to ram them." The crew looked at her in shock, but Sarah's determination was unshakable. The Fury surged forward, pushing through the station's weakened defenses. With a thunderous crash, they breached the outer hull, coming to rest inside a massive hangar. "Security teams, prepare for boarding action," Sarah ordered, unstrapping from her chair. "I'm going in personally." As Sarah led her team through the station's corridors, they encountered sporadic resistance, but the Empire soldiers they faced seemed confused, almost frightened. It was clear they had never faced anything like the Fury before. Finally, they reached the heart of the station. The doors slid open to reveal a sight that made Sarah's blood run cold. There, surrounded by banks of humming machinery, stood Commander Zarek himself. The alien tyrant turned, his eyes widening in surprise. "Impossible," he hissed. "How did you find us? How did you defeat our emotional weapon?" Sarah stepped forward, her eyes glowing with barely contained power. "You thought you could harness the power of human emotion," she said, her voice echoing with the anger of billions. "You don't understand the first thing about what it means to be human." Zarek snarled, reaching for a weapon. But before he could fire, Sarah raised her hand. A wave of pure emotional energy erupted from her, slamming Zarek against the wall and pinning him there. "This is for Sophia," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is for every innocent life you've taken." As Sarah approached the helpless commander, the fate of the Galactic Empire hung in the balance. The final confrontation had begun, and the power of human emotion would determine the outcome. Commander Zarek struggled against the invisible force pinning him to the wall, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Captain Sarah Chen stood before him, her body radiating with the combined emotional energy of humanity. "How?" Zarek gasped. "How can you control such power?" Sarah's eyes glowed as she replied, her voice echoing with countless others. "Because we understand something you never will, Zarek. The strength of human emotion doesn't come from hate or fear. It comes from love, hope, and the desire to protect." As if to prove her point, images began to flicker in the air around them. Scenes from Earth, families reuniting, children playing, people helping each other in times of need. The emotional energy in the room shifted, becoming warmer, more powerful. Zarek watched in awe and confusion. But we studied human emotions. We weaponized them." "You only scratched the surface," Sarah said. "You took our anger and pain, but you missed the core of what makes us human. Our capacity for forgiveness, for growth, for love even in the darkest times." The alien commander's struggles weakened as understanding began to dawn on his face. Meanwhile, throughout the station, the Fury's crew was busy. They downloaded crucial data, freed prisoners from other alien races, and disabled the Empire's emotional weapon technology. Lieutenant Raj Patel's voice came through Sarah's communicator. "Captain, we've secured the station. Earth Defense Command is sending ships to hold this position." Sarah nodded, then turned her attention back to Zarek. "It's over, Commander. The Empire's reign of terror ends today." But instead of surrendering, Zarek let out a bitter laugh. "You think this is the end? The Empire spans galaxies. We'll regroup, rebuild. We'll come back stronger." Sarah shook her head, a sad smile on her face. "No, you won't, because we're not just defeating you here today. We're going to show every world under your control that there's another way." With a gesture, Sarah commanded the Fury to broadcast. Across the Empire's vast territory, on every planet and space station, view screens came to life. The faces of oppressed beings from 1,000 worlds watched in amazement as Sarah spoke. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice carried by the Fury's emotional amplification. "The Galactic Empire has ruled through fear and cruelty. They tried to break us by killing an innocent child. But instead, they awakened something they couldn't understand. The true strength of unity and compassion." As Sarah spoke, the Fury transmitted data packets to every corner of the Empire. Evidence of the Empire's crimes, but also plans for clean energy, medical advancements, and peaceful cooperation between species. We offer you a choice, Sarah continued. Continued oppression under the Empire, or a new era of cooperation. Earth extends its hand in friendship to all peaceful beings. Together, we can build a galaxy where no child ever has to fear the sound of warships in the sky. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the Empire's territory, rebellions erupted. But these weren't violent uprisings. Inspired by Earth's example, people of all species came together, choosing unity over division. In the control room, Zarak slumped to the ground as Sarah released him. "It's really over, isn't it?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah nodded. "Your empire is finished. But you'll face justice for your crimes, Zarak. Real justice, not vengeance." As Earth ships arrived to secure the station, Sarah returned to the Fury. The ship hummed with contentment, the emotional energy of billions now calm and hopeful. "Fury," Sarah said softly, placing her hand on a console. "Set a course for home." As the Fury turned towards Earth, news of their victory spread across the galaxy. The ship that had begun its journey fueled by grief and rage was now powered by hope and the promise of a better future. Weeks later, on Earth, a new memorial was unveiled. It showed a young girl, Sophia, looking up at the stars with wonder. Around the base were written the words that had inspired a galaxy. "Earth will make you pay for this." But now, those words had taken on a new meaning. Earth had indeed made the Empire pay, not with destruction, but by showing the galaxy a better way. Sophia's death had not been in vain. It had sparked a revolution of compassion that would echo across the stars for generations to come. As Sarah stood before the memorial, surrounded by cheering crowds, she smiled. The Fury had done its job. Now, the real work of building a peaceful galaxy could begin.